to share with you on a topic that I have called the art of identifying and capturing opportunities. I've given it the subtitle, The Vision Ladder, learning to see what others cannot. The challenge that we have in entrepreneurship is not that there is a shortage of opportunities. Opportunities are there, but we struggle mostly because we do not know how to capture these opportunities. We do not know how to identify these opportunities, and we don't know how to walk in them in a way that empowers us to bring about the change that we should bring. The future belongs to those who can see the future before it arrives. And the entrepreneur's task is not to predict the future, it is to build it. I want us to read one scripture that we find in Luke 4 from verse 14 to 21. I'm going to read quickly so that at least we can move since we are behind time. Jesus returned to Galilee in the power of the Spirit, and news about him spread through the whole countryside. He was teaching in their synagogues, and everyone praised him. He went to Nazareth where he had been brought up, and on the Sabbath day he went into the synagogue, as was his custom. He stood up to read, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him. Unrolling it, he found the place where it is written, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." Then he rolled up the scroll and gave it back to the attendant and sat down. The eyes of everyone in the synagogue were fastened on him. He began by saying to them, "Today this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing." The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and the recovery of sight for the blind. Today I want to speak about that particular part, the recovery of sight for the blind. Oftentimes in Scripture we find Jesus saying, "You have eyes, but you don't see. You have ears, but you don't hear." So having eyesight does not automatically translate to having a vision. Are you understanding this? You can see something, but a lot of people are not able to interpret what they are seeing. So the fact that you do have eyesight does not automatically translate to you actually seeing the things that you are supposed to be seeing. A lot of us, when we see someone who is blind, or when we hear about someone who is blind, automatically the conclusion is that person does not see. But everyone in this earth sees. The difference between you and a blind man is the clarity of your vision. A blind man sees darkness. He sees something. You understand? He is not able to form a vision of anything because he can't go beyond that. And I would like to suggest to you today that the challenge or the difference between an entrepreneur and everybody else is that an entrepreneur is somebody who has gotten to that stage where they see beyond where everybody else sees. Who sees opportunity where everybody else doesn't see anything. And why are they like that? They are not like that because they were created that way. Of course, yes, to some people it comes naturally, but I believe that this is a skill that everybody else can learn. The skill is a skill of opportunity recognition. And it is often taught as a collection of techniques. If you read business books, you will find a lot of people who talk about opportunity recognition through a lot of frameworks, through a lot of theories that are very difficult to understand. But today I want to teach it differently, because I believe opportunities are first seen before they are captured. Before we talk about identifying opportunities, we must first learn to see them. And the question is, how does an entrepreneur see these opportunities? Like I do in every session, I create a framework that aligns with what I'm teaching, and it gives you a clear pathway to the fulfillment of everything that has been taught. And today, the framework that I bring is called the vision ladder. I use an example of a ladder in everything because I believe if I leave you with something that you can go up on, you will be able to understand what I'm teaching better. And it's part of understanding the process that gets us from where we are to where we want to go. Every entrepreneur is somewhere on this ladder. And by the end of this session, my goal is that each of you will know exactly where you are and exactly what your next step is. One of my favorite portions of scripture in the Bible is when Jesus heals a blind man at Bethsaida. When he does that, they bring a blind man to him. And then they say, can you heal him? Can you heal him? And Jesus, instead of healing that blind man in front of the people, he takes that man out of the city, out of the town. And when he gets out of the town with that man, he spits on the ground. And then after spitting on the ground, he then rubs the blind man's eyes with his spit. And then he asks the man, what do you see? Do you see anything? And the blind man looked up and said, I see men like trees walking. Then Jesus put his hands on his eyes again and made him look up again. And his eyesight was restored, and he saw everyone clearly. Vision in this verse is shown by Jesus as a miracle that unfolds in stages. We have a man who did not see. He had spit rubbed onto his eyes, and he could see partially. And the second time that happened, he could see fully. Now, the question is, did Jesus fail to heal this man in the first stage? The answer is no. If Jesus is the Christ and he is the Son of God, it means he is able to do anything. But in this case, I believe he was showing us something that he wanted people to understand fully. Recovery of eyesight happens in stages. Clarity of vision comes in stages. It doesn't happen at once. There is a blindness that has quietly kept millions of people, especially here in Africa, in poverty, despite having healthy eyes. It is a condition that I call entrepreneurial blindness. Entrepreneurial blindness is a blindness to opportunity. You hear a lot of people ask, what kind of business can I start? I want to start a business, but I don't know where to start. I need to make money, but I don't know what I should do. The issue is not that people don't know they need to do something. The issue is that they actually don't know what they need to do. So as an entrepreneur, I believe this is something that is going to be very helpful to you, because every day millions of people are walking past businesses that have not yet been built. They pass problems no one has solved. They experience frustrations that customers would gladly pay to remove, but they adapt themselves to broken systems until those systems become invisible. The entrepreneur must become a different species in our community. He is a different species. He possesses a different kind of sight that is not a part of how people behave every day. The entrepreneur sees what everyone sees, but he does not interpret it the way everybody else interprets it. Where others see inconvenience, an entrepreneur sees a problem that needs to be solved. He sees demand. Where others sees failure, he sees possibility. Where others see obstacles, he sees invitations. This is why I believe the healing of the blind man at Bethsaida is a very insightful miracle, because it shows us this process, and from that miracle, I then coined what I term the vision ladder, which is 8 stages of entrepreneurial vision formation. Because nobody wakes up suddenly seeing $1 billion business. This happens slowly. Entrepreneurial vision develops at one stage at a time. And today my objective is to give you something practical that you can actually get beyond mere inspiration. The first stage on this ladder is seeing. Everybody sees. Okay? When you wake up and you get into your car or into a bus to get into your city, every time you look out the window, seeing requires no entrepreneurial ability whatsoever. It simply requires functioning eyes. The tragedy is that most people confuse seeing with understanding. They believe that because they have looked at something, they have understood it. When you see a chair, what you see on that chair is what your mind has captured from the knowledge that you have received from everything that you have interacted with in your life. And that is what has given you the conceptualization of a chair. So when you look at a chair, you know a chair as a concept. All right? It is something that you can sit on. If you want to move it, it's something that you can carry from one point to the next. Okay? So you understand a few basic things about a chair. But because you have seen a chair, it does not mean that you have understood it fully. Okay? Because when we start asking about that chair, trying to get details about how that chair is made, very few people would understand that. Okay? If I ask you, yes, that is a chair, but how much weight does it carry? Very few people will be able to answer that. You understand? But if you bring in an expert who deals with chairs, by looking at this chair, he has a lot of things that he can tell you about the design of the chair. And he can give you estimations of the weight of that chair. If it's a plastic chair, he can even tell you if it's virgin plastic or if it's recycled plastic, just by looking at that chair. That kind of insight is not insight that you can get because you have just looked and said, this is a chair. Like I said, everybody looks at a chair, but when you look at a chair, we all do not see the same thing. Okay? So seeing is something that everybody else gets. All right? But entrepreneurship begins when one accepts that reality that surrounds us is full of signals. It's full of minute details of information that we are not able to capture just by looking at something. Our eyes are opened by knowledge that surrounds every occurrence that we come in touch with in our day-to-day operations. So when we understand that reality is full of signals, what are these signals? There's a concept that I love. When I talk of signals, I think it's important to break this down. A signal is a sound that you can decode and know what it means. Okay? If you hear a sound and you don't know what it means, that is just noise. Is that true? Okay? Let's say there is a sound outside. You don't know where it's coming from. You don't know what it is. That is noise. So when you're talking to someone about that sound, you say there is a noise outside. Okay? But when that sound is 3 distinct knocks, okay, it becomes a signal. Because automatically you say there is someone who is knocking on the door who wants to come in. So because you can now collect information from that noise, it becomes a what? It becomes a signal. So the word signal, I can use it metaphorically to try and explain how we see things in everyday occurrences. So I can see a queue outside there. As an entrepreneur, for me, it's a signal. Okay? It tells me something about the type of service that is there. So if I see a queue, I can then say there's a queue because a lot of people want what's inside. If I see a queue, I can then say there's a queue because maybe the people who are serving inside are slow. Just by looking at a queue, I am decoding something that is happening in a business or that is happening in my environment. Okay? So every complaint is a signal. Every delay is a signal. Every inefficiency is a signal. Every abandoned building is a signal. Every empty shelf is a signal. Every frustrated customer is a signal. So we must start looking at things in processes. Because when we start looking at things in processes, that's the only way we then get to decode these signals. So when you go outside and you see people throwing plastic everywhere, okay? Someone can just see trash. Another person can come and say, why is this happening? Okay? They want to understand what's behind that. And then the next thing that they're thinking is, what if I start a recycling business? Okay? To pick this plastic and recycle it, I can make other things from this. And because I'm getting the plastic freely, whatever I then make using this becomes cheap. They have understood the process. So whenever you train yourself to see things in processes, to see things in this way, as connected to something, you begin the work of exploring what those connections are. And once you do that, you then begin to receive these signals that I'm talking about. Unfortunately, the problem with human beings and humanity in general is familiarity. When you see something once, you get used to it. You understand? Now, because you have been seeing it frequently, you adapt. So if I come in here and I put a red paint on that wall, what will happen is every time somebody walks in who hasn't been in this room before, they'll ask themselves, why is that part of the wall red? Okay? But the minute that you come in here 10 times, Will you be asking that same question every day? The answer is no, because that red paint, even though it's out of place, has become a feature of this room. And whenever you think of this room, you associate it with that red paint. So you have become familiar because you have adapted. So unfortunately, we adapt so well that eventually we stop seeing the very things that should disturb us. When something happens every day, it slowly disappears from our consciousness. We stop questioning it, we stop noticing it. Because this is how we are wired as humanity. We stop believing that things could be different because we start saying, this is how things have always been. Ask yourself how many things you tell yourself, this is how it has always been. And why should it change? Culture is formed out of that. Okay? Our traditions are formed out of that. Passed from one generation to the next. Why? Because it has always been this way. Now, this is the reason why some of the greatest opportunities in business are hidden in plain sight. It's not because they're invisible, but it's because they have become normal. And the entrepreneur must refuse to normalize this dysfunction and must continue to ask why. Why should things be this way? Because this is the one question that will set you apart from everybody else. The reason why we are failing to see opportunities is we are not asking why. And we are not asking, could this thing be different? We have become too familiar. And that is the reason why a lot of the times you find it is foreigners that come into your space. And when they come into your space, they see opportunities that you are not seeing. Okay? The rock that is behind your house, you wake up shocked because the Chinese have applied for a claim in their mining granite just behind your family homestead. But you have lived there for generations, and the only thing that you are fighting for is the graves of your forefathers. You're saying, you can't do this here. You can't move me here because I have graves of my forefathers here. You put graves in an area that had an opportunity. Your fathers died, they didn't see that opportunity. You grew up in that environment, you didn't see that opportunity. Now finally someone comes from China or from Europe and they say, all right, look, there's a demand for this black granite, so can we apply for a concession from the government to mine this black granite? And the government says yes. Why is it saying yes? Because they are seeing an opportunity to make revenue. But you didn't see that. Why? Because you are familiar. So we are too familiar about our surroundings to a point where we actually don't see these opportunities. So, in some cases, when we then get that insight and when we then get to wake up and we see that there is actually something wrong with this, okay? Because we are not trained to look at opportunities this way, we see problems to blame someone. If you go out and you see trash, you tell yourself, this place is trashed because people here don't know how to manage whatever, their rubbish and things like that. Okay? You apportion blame somewhere else. Because you are not trained to look at systems. You think people work in isolation. You think things happened in unconnected ways. So, when you know what the steady state is, and you refuse to accept responsibility, you're an untrained entrepreneur. You may never start a business. Okay? Because you're refusing to take responsibility. But somebody who sees something and chooses to take responsibility, they are wired to be an entrepreneur because they know that if I do this, there are rewards to it. So they train themselves to save, or they save by accident because that is naturally who they are. Entrepreneurs are the people that walk into a community, see what's wrong, they fix it, and who benefits? The entire community. It's not them. Okay? So the entrepreneur is one who knows that every friction on their path is a call into a creative realm, and for them, seeing is the beginning of something much better. Okay? So from there, they climb to the second rung of the ladder. The second rung of the ladder is noticing. Noticing comes out of a very simple thing. It comes out of observation. You begin to notice things when you look at something long enough to form an impression of what that thing means. Okay? You can walk into this room and not notice her. All right? But when you are in this room long enough, you begin to observe your surroundings and you notice everything that's there. Noticing is intentional. Seeing is passive. Okay? Noticing is the discipline of attention. When you pay attention, you observe things and you begin to see things that everybody else ignores. I often say you will never find what you're not looking for. Okay? It's a principle that I have come to realize, and I always give an example of somebody who lives in a community that is all these small stones. They are shiny, they're bright, they don't know what they are. So because they have no idea what they are, they just say, there are some nice stones out there that I take, I use them. Sometimes I just put them outside my house. Sometimes I just decorate my pots with them. They don't know what those things are. Until somebody comes from a faraway land and they say, these are diamonds. And they're worth a lot of money. So the minute that somebody tells them that these are diamonds, what do they see? They see value. They begin looking for those things everywhere they go. And before you know it, they are studying every stone and rock formation around them because they now know that there are stones that are different from others. So you will never find what you are not looking for. So if all you are looking for is employment, you will see vacancies. Whenever you see a company, you ask yourself, how can I go and work there? But if you're looking for problems, you will find reasons to complain. Okay? So even if you then get that job, the next thing is, why are they asking me to come to work at this particular time? The next thing is, they are paying me too little because I'm working so much, because you're always focused on finding the problems there. But if you train yourself to look for opportunities, your entire world changes. Because the greatest opportunities are rarely hidden. They are hiding in plain sight, protected by one thing that I have mentioned earlier. It's acceptance. We have accepted them for what they are. People can easily accept inconvenience, and in Africa, actually, the majority have accepted the inefficiency, they've accepted the waste, they've accepted the pain of our daily lives, the delays, the poor customer service, the broken promises. Most people in Africa have accepted these things. So when you come out and you point these things out and say, why are these things this way? People will actually look at you and say, are you new? This is how things are. Because they have accepted them. But the entrepreneur must never accept what is. You have to notice, you have to pause, you have to pay attention, you have to ask questions. And this is what separates builders from observers. Okay? There's a kind of intelligence that is rarely taught in this life. It is the intelligence of attention. Whatever you give attention to grows. And whenever you give something attention and you become attuned to the reality surrounding that thing, you realize that you begin to see a lot of things that everybody else around you is not seeing. Intelligent attention is the ability to stand inside an ordinary place and notice extraordinary things. This is a place where an entrepreneur gets to, and they have become so sensitive to the realities around them. When you walk into the market, like every city, every African city has a market. When you walk into the market, what do you see? A lot of people, when they get there, the first thing they see is the chaos. Is that true? When you walk into the market, you see chaos. But an entrepreneur, they are supposed to notice the logistics. How did all this product come here? Okay? They're supposed to see the supply chain. So if all these people are selling these things at this price, who is supplying them and at what price? How are they storing these things? How is money moving in this market? How are payments being received? So when they're done selling all these things and others are remaining, where is the West going? You understand? When you look at these things, you look at market information, you look at code chain opportunities, you look at the data that could be collected just from the transactions that are happening. Because in a lot of African markets, there's so much information that's moving around that's not being collected. Okay? We're losing this data. And an entrepreneur who goes there and sees that this data is being lost will create a solution. We'll try to find a way of collecting that data, and they can monetize that data. Two people, they walk into the market. One sees chaos. They tell themselves, I'm never going back to that market again. I don't like being in the market. The second person goes there, and he sees a mine of opportunities, a place that he can harvest opportunities. You understand? What is the difference? The difference is attention. Exactly the same market, completely different eyesight, because entrepreneurs notice differently. So if you want to start a business, you must never ask yourself, what business should I start? Instead, ask, what have I stopped noticing because I've become too familiar with it? And that single question may become the beginning of the greatest enterprise that you can build. Because when you start with, where can I get money? Is the wrong place to start. Because the opportunity is in the inconveniences around you that you have gotten used to. Things that you have started walking around because you know, if I go there, there are thieves there. So I use that road around to avoid that. You understand? So you're avoiding the places that give you the most friction because you feel that there is a longer way of doing things that goes around this obstacle that's here. But the opportunities lie in the friction that you are avoiding. Okay? That is where the opportunities lie. And it takes us to the third rung on this ladder, which is perception. When we talk about perceiving, we are asking a much deeper question. We are asking, what is really happening? There's a very big difference between looking and understanding. Most people stop at observation, they just notice things. Okay? But very few people want to go deep and ask what is really happening here. Because seeing identifies the symptom. Perception uncovers the cause. And this is something that you must take notice of. Seeing identifies the symptom. Perceiving uncovers the cause. Suppose you walk into an office and find a queue stretching outside the building. Most people will say, this place is always busy. The entrepreneur will ask, like I said the other time, why is the queue long? Where is the delay coming from? Is it because they don't have technology? Is it because there's too much paperwork? Is it because they have staffing issues? Is it because there are regulation issues? Is it because departments are failing to communicate with one another? Are you understanding this? You are asking what is happening here. Because you understand that visible problems usually have invisible causes. And opportunity recognition is a process of diagnosing problems, finding the root causes of these problems. Because this is what separates you from everybody else. The opportunity, unfortunately, is rarely found in the symptom. It is found in understanding the system that created it. Because when you see the system and not the events, what begins to happen is you begin to excavate for the things that are deeper. And as you go deeper, and this is why entrepreneurs never ask what happened. They ask what system produced this outcome. Okay? Because every outcome is the product of a system. And if you understand the system, you understand where value can be created. Why? Every problem you see on the surface has root problems. And one of the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs make is solving the wrong problems. But the question is, how do you know this is the wrong problem and this is the correct problem to solve? I'll give you an example. Imagine someone says, patients wait 6 hours at the clinic. Is that not a problem? That people are waiting 6 hours. It is a problem, right? But then, because it sounds like a problem, it doesn't make it a problem worth solving. The fact that people are waiting 6 hours at the clinic is not entirely the problem. It is a complaint. And those are two different things. A complaint usually comes from the friction that's happening. Okay? A complaint is the symptom. But underneath the symptom is something much bigger, and that thing is the problem. In the example that I just gave of patients waiting for 6 hours, the real problem could be that whoever is scheduling the appointments is booking too many people, and then now people have to wait. Okay? So it's a scheduling problem. Perhaps it's staff allocation. Maybe people are coming, and then they are not getting served quickly because there are few staff members to attend to them. That is the problem. Maybe it's paper-based records. People have to fill very long forms before they actually get in to get the service that they are looking for. So this problem can be solved by digitizing the process. Okay? So when you see the problem, you're seeing the symptom. When you see the queue, you're seeing the symptom. But when you see what's happening beneath it, you uncover the problem. The queue is the evidence. The complaint is the evidence of a problem. And great entrepreneurs must become investigators. They solve not only the symptom, but the problem that is underlying that symptom. Because if you solve the symptom, what will happen is when you come back tomorrow, what are you going to find? The same thing has started again. You understand? So we need to solve the system to create lasting value. Okay? Because problems lie within the system. So whenever you see something on the surface, go under it and ask yourself, what really is happening here? What is the system that's running this thing? And within that system, where are the inefficiencies? Where are the challenges? Because once you do that, you will begin to uncover the opportunities that are there. And I call this the discipline of asking why. Asking why is like digging. It's one of the simplest things that an entrepreneur can learn. Asking why. You understand? Jesus once said, let these small children come to me because the kingdom of heaven belongs to them. I personally believe what he was referring to was the curiosity that the children have. Whenever a child picks a stone or whatever and they ask themselves, what is this? And they'll come and ask you if they don't know. They are not embarrassed to ask. Okay? You tell them, no, this is a stone. What does it do? Okay? We use it to do this. Why do we use it to do? They'll keep digging until they find the real thing that they are looking for. Okay? So, an entrepreneur should master this technique of asking why. Because until you ask why, you will never be able to surface the problem. that is underneath the symptoms that you are seeing. So when you ask why, you keep going deeper, and as you go deeper, you uncover the problems that are there. Let's say retailers are constantly running out of stock. What is the next question? Why? All right? So if the answer is because they cannot predict demand, what's the next question? Why? Okay? If they cannot predict demand because they do not collect accurate sales data, what's the next question? Why? Because existing inventory software is too complicated and too expensive because it is designed for large corporations instead of small retailers. You see what has happened there? We have systems that are created for big retailers. We don't have systems that are created for small retailers. The next question is, how many small retailers do we have? We have thousands or hundreds of thousands of these small retailers in every city. Okay? Is that not an opportunity affecting many people? Is that not a problem affecting many people? And solving that problem is big enough to create an opportunity for a much bigger business? You uncovered that opportunity because you what? You went down. You asked why. So when you see things, never take those things at face value and say, this is what it is, and I am going to leave it there. If you're going to be a successful entrepreneur, you need to go lower. Ask why. What is under the surface? And once you do that, you'll realize that you'll begin to understand some of these things better. What brought that assumption, that understanding, is you cut all assumptions. And because you cut all assumptions, you were able to perceive what is really happening. So perception gives you understanding. Okay? It takes us to the fourth rung. The fourth rung on this ladder, on the vision ladder, is discernment. Discernment asks one question: what truly matters? Okay? What truly matters? Why do we have to ask this question? Because not every problem that you see is an opportunity. You understand? Not every problem that you see is the opportunity for you. It can be an opportunity for somebody else. But it's not an opportunity for what? For you. All right? Dangote can look at the supply chain issues surrounding oil trade in Africa, and he can then say, I have built one refinery in Nigeria, I'm now going to build another refinery in East Africa. Okay? That is an opportunity for what? For him. Why is it an opportunity for him? Because he has the resources to actually do something about this problem. All right? It cannot be an opportunity for you because you don't have the resources to actually do what? To actually do that. The other thing, if I am using Dangote as an example, is there are other problems that are too small for him to solve. The question is, what is happening in your community? Maybe there's this opportunity that's there. All right? It's a small-scale mining opportunity that you see. Dangote cannot come from wherever he is and he puts his resources there. Why? Because he has big opportunities to chase after. But for someone who is local, this is a big opportunity for them. So they can actually start here. So not every problem that you see is an opportunity for you. Okay? This is where many aspiring entrepreneurs make expensive mistakes. Okay? Because they see a problem, they become excited, they build a solution, then they discover nobody wants it. You don't look around to ask yourself, how many other people are being affected by this problem? I did it once. Okay? I saw the work that Jack Ma was doing. I had just come back to Zimbabwe from where I was working outside the country, and I saw this very big problem. Okay? I asked myself a question: why don't we buy things online in Zimbabwe? I think if we create a platform that enables entrepreneurs to sell things online, what would actually happen is we can save a lot on rentals, okay? We can save a lot of time in terms of the time that you're spending going around to buy things. The reasons for doing this were there, okay? But then there was one reason for doing this that was not there. It was the readiness of the market to absorb that solution. Why was that readiness not there? Number one, we did not have a payment system. When I started doing this, there was no payment system to actually use for these online payments. So we then said, no problem, we are going to use cash on delivery. Okay? But then there was a second problem. There was a trust issue. Locally, people were not used to buy anything online. They didn't know anything about it. So even if something is advertised online, someone would say, all right, look, I want to actually touch this thing and see it. And then I can then pay after what? After I've seen it. So the whole model that we are building is useless because people would rather walk into a shop and buy things. The third problem was because we had a lot of fake things around. People would buy something, then they advertise it as something else, compounding the trust problems that we have. The fourth problem is we didn't have a delivery network. Right now, if you're selling something online, there are a lot of bikers around to take those things and deliver them. We didn't have that. So if I was going to be successful, I had to solve all these problems. But for me, the one thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to create a solution. I wanted to put it on the market. And the next thing is, after creating that, I took it to entrepreneurs. They were like, no, we are okay. What we're doing is working. And we don't need this. How much are you charging us for this? I'm charging $50. No, I can't pay $50 a month for this. How many sales will I make on this? I am not sure, but I think it will give you convenience. Young men come back when you're sure. You understand? But these are the people that I made this solution for. So discernment is the wisdom to distinguish between an interesting problem and a valuable opportunity. Okay? So every time you find yourself facing a problem and you're looking for the opportunity in there, after you've asked yourself why and you've come to the place where you uncover what the problem really is, you need to ask 4 questions. The first question is it a recurring problem? Does this problem happen every day? Why? Because businesses are built on recurring needs, not isolated incidents. Are you getting this? When you sell something today, someone has to come back and buy it again at another point in time. Or to buy something else that's connected to what you have sold at another point in what? In time. So the number of people that are affected by this problem is very important. And the third question is it painful enough? People pay money to relieve their pain. Okay? They pay money to relieve their pain. Some people pay money for other reasons, like I always say, we pay for a limited number of things in this world, okay? The first thing that we pay for is ignorance. If someone has information that you don't have, you're going to pay them for you to access that knowledge, okay? If there is a doctor who knows what you're going through, you will pay that doctor so that you get what? You get the solution. The second thing that we pay for is convenience. I'm sitting here, I want something to eat. So I can send someone to go and buy that thing for me. Okay? And then when they come back with that thing, I pay them for their service. But when they get there, they'll also pay someone who has prepared that food. so that it's ready when they're there to buy it. So I'm paying two people in this chain, and I'm paying them because of what? Because of convenience. The third thing that people pay for is luxury. Okay? I don't want to frame it that way because it becomes complicated. It's association. All right? Branding is a major part of this. Louis Vuitton is a valuable brand because people want to pay to be associated with it. All right? When someone wears Louis Vuitton, they are saying that I am rich, so I buy exclusive clothes that make me look rich. Are you understanding this? So they are paying a lot of money to be associated with this brand. You put 10 shoes here, 9 that don't have any labels, and 1 that has either a Nike or Adidas label. Many people are going to pick the Adidas or the Nike. Why? Association. You understand? They associate the Nike brand with strength, they associate with value, but the other brands, they don't what? They don't know them. So they will pick something that they know because they want to be associated with it. I believe those are the 3 major things that we pay for in this life. So, if you're asking yourself, is this problem painful enough? All right? You're looking at one of those things, all right, to say, if someone is going to buy this from me, are they going to buy it because it's convenient? Are they going to buy it because they're ignorant? Are they going to buy it because they want to be associated with this? You understand? When you answer those questions, you're going to find that somewhere in there you will find a business. And then the fourth question is, will people actually pay? If I have done all this, is someone going to come with their money and give me? And remember, I said they give you money because those things are tied to what? Convenience, association, ignorance. Are you understanding this? So, because you understand this, you begin to focus your attention on finding these things everywhere you look. Because one of the greatest resources that we have as entrepreneurs is attention. Where we focus our attention determines what we eventually build. And discernment allows us to say, okay, this is important, I am going to spend my time here. But it also says, this can wait. Because not every problem is a problem that you're supposed to what? That you're supposed to solve. There are things that are merely interesting. But there are things that transform lives. Okay? At some point, Elon Musk of Tesla sold fire throwers to raise money. They actually made fire throwers at Tesla, and they sold them for a very high price. Okay? But it was a marketing gimmick that they did for a very short space of time to raise the money that they wanted to do other things. Is Tesla making flamethrowers now? No. Why are they not making flamethrowers now? Because it was a merely interesting idea that started out somewhere on Twitter, and then they built it because there was a large enough grouping of people who were excited about that idea at that point in time. But you can't make a business model because something is interesting. Okay? So you create a business out of something that has the power to transform lives. Okay? So every great entrepreneur eventually becomes known not merely for what they pursued, but for what they deliberately ignored, because not every opportunity is one worth pursuing. That takes us to the 5th rank on the vision ladder. and it's aptly named vision. This is where entrepreneurship truly begins. Seeing observes reality, vision imagines a new reality, and everybody can describe the world as it is. But entrepreneurs who have vision describe the world as it should become. When we see something, we ask ourselves, what could exist because there is this problem? What could exist because this thing is there? So vision is the ability to see tomorrow while standing in today. It is refusing to believe that today's limitations must define tomorrow's possibilities. And the entrepreneur must train themselves to live in these two realities. To live in the present and also to live in the future. When everyone sees a struggling farmer, the entrepreneur sees a thriving agricultural enterprise. Because what they are seeing is not just the struggling farmer. They are seeing how they can help so many struggling farmers. All right? Because when you help these struggling farmers and you eliminate their struggles, what do you make? Money. Why are you making money? Because you have transformed their lives. And that is where businesses are created. So it's the same thing when you see informal traders, entrepreneur then says, there are so many informal traders here. How do I organize this into a marketplace that people can come to because it is what? It is order. How can I eliminate the barriers or the challenges that these people are facing so that at least we can what? We can get order somewhere. So this is the challenge that we are having here in Africa. Everybody sees Africa's problems, but not many people are seeing the opportunities that are there. So we then find that it's people outside who are then seeing the opportunities that are there. If you read whatever you are reading about Africa now, they will be telling you that by 2050 we'll be having 2.5 billion Africans. Okay? The next thing, second to that, is this is going to be a problem for African governments. Why is it going to be a problem? We have so many people, so many young people who want to be employed, but they don't have jobs. Is that not a problem? That is a problem. But an entrepreneur must not see that as a problem. An entrepreneur must then wake up and say, there are going to be 2.5 billion people on this continent, and the majority of those people are going to be young people. So these people need jobs. So we have to create companies to accommodate these people. Are you understanding this? So when you then see international companies coming to Africa because they are looking at these population statistics, they are coming because they are saying Africa is going to be the largest market by 2050. So they are asking themselves, what can we sell in Africa? They are telling themselves by 2050, because there are so many people, the middle class is going to what? Is going to grow, is going to go up. Many people are going to be among the middle class. So there are going to be people that can buy expensive products here. So let's position ourselves today, so that when this time comes, we'll make money from this. But here in Africa, we are not seeing these things. What we are seeing are the problems. So we need to train ourselves to see these problems as opportunities for us to do something now. It is very tempting to equate vision with imagination. But vision is not merely imagination, it is disciplined imagination. Okay? The possibilities that you see must be grounded in the reality of where you are. But you must always train yourself to not be limited by these realities. When we talk about the problems in Africa, the next sobering things that come is, okay, so I want to build a business in Africa. Where will I get the money? This is a question that most African entrepreneurs ask themselves. Who will fund my business? Okay? But when you start with the question of funding, you will never get to actually dissect the problem and see the opportunity. Because your focus is on the things that you don't have, not on the things that you actually what? You actually have. So try by all means to discipline your imagination to only see mostly the positives around. Of course, it must be tempered by the reality that's there, but you must see the positives that are there. How did this come to be? It came to be because phones became widespread. It came to be because traditional banking remained inaccessible. So if everybody else has a phone, but most of the people don't have banking accounts. And then the telecoms companies started asking themselves, so how do we make it easy for these people to load airtime into their phones, to buy things, or to keep money in their phones, because they now essentially have this wallet. So can we then use this technology and this connectivity to help people keep money in their phones? And mobile money became an African concept that is spreading all over the world today. At that point in time, connectivity had improved. Government began adopting regulations to accommodate this. So you then find that opportunities that are worth pursuing usually lie at the confluence of many trends that are coming together. So if you are looking at the environment, you need to be able to look at these trends. Like I'm saying, all these things that were happening, widespread access to phones, no banking in rural communities, improved connectivity, relaxed regulations. If you're looking at them, they are not interesting. They're things that are just happening. But the minute that you connect them, they point towards a revolutionary opportunity, which is mobile money. So entrepreneurs who recognize the pattern, they do not predict the future. They simply see where the present is leading, and that is vision. You understand? It's the same thing that is happening with artificial intelligence now. The entrepreneurs who are in that space are seeing where this technology is going. We have major large language models that are coming from America. Okay? We have Cloud by Anthropic, we have ChatGPT. Okay? All these things are coming to Africa. But there's a group of African entrepreneurs who are saying, okay, look, so if we have all these language models trained on data from all over the world and coming to Africa, and we don't have our own data and our own language models, then what is going to happen? So we now have large language models that are being made in African languages. Okay? Because if we don't do that, the same thing that happened with the internet and everything else will happen here. ChatGPT will come in Shona the same way Google came in what? In Shona. And African entrepreneurs will miss the opportunity because they actually control this data. So it's important for us now, because we are seeing this trend, to then keep that data so that at least we can provide local solutions that are relevant in our own market. So when you read these trends, you begin to realize that entrepreneurs are not a special breed of people. They are people who have trained themselves to look at things that everybody is seeing, and because they have trained themselves, what is happening now is they then get to uncover or to connect the dots quickly before everybody else is seeing the same things that are happening. So vision grows every time you see, notice, perceive, and exercise discernment. This is what expands your capacity to visualize things. It is the natural consequence of disciplined observation. So as an entrepreneur, you need to ask yourself, what am I seeing that others have accepted? What systems have I begun to understand better than everybody else? And which problems truly matter to me so that at least I can start solving them? And what could exist if I had the courage to build it? Because when you do so, you have the power to move from vision to responsibility. You are no longer merely seeing problems or identifying opportunities. You are now building yourself accountable. You are now building yourself to be accountable for the outcomes that follow. Because this is how we get to the sixth rank, which is insight. Once you have visualized the future and you're saying, I think this is something that should be there. Okay? Insight is then asking, how can this thing exist? I have seen it. I see there's an opportunity there. But how do I bring this thing to life here and now? Vision asks what could exist. Insight asks how can it exist? Many people possess vision, but very few possess insight. And an entrepreneur who is worth their salt must be able to not only understand the problem, they must also be able to describe a better future that will come out of a solution that they can build around that problem. But they must also have the insight to understand how to build that solution. We're saying that e-commerce makes selling and buying things easier. It brings convenience. Okay? So you can then say, all right, look, I have a vision. I see a future where most of these transactions are going to happen online because it's what? It's convenient and it's cheaper. But once you have gotten there, the question is, do you know how to build this solution? Are you getting this? Because that is where insight lives. Vision without insight often leads to frustration because you know what should exist, but you cannot see the path that leads there. And the bridge between imagination and execution is the insight that you have. It is the moment when possibility begins to acquire a structure where the entrepreneur stops dreaming and begins designing. Okay? People often think insight arrives like lightning, just like that, randomly. But it grows quietly from the observations that you have been having over time. It grows because you have disciplined curiosity. It's something that I call entrepreneurial alertness. People have often used this language that you are sleepwalking into something. Okay? This happens because you are not alert to the things that are around you. All right? So, the reason why most of us are failing to see opportunities is because we are living our lives on autopilot. As entrepreneurs, we should not do this. If a customer complains, we should listen. If someone invents a workaround, we should notice. If a regulation changes, we should investigate. When technology advances, we should ask, what does this make possible? Markets are constantly speaking, and insight belongs to those who are listening. Now, the interesting thing about insight is that information is unequally distributed. Okay? Every one of us is somewhere for a reason. Some are doctors, some are teachers, some are accountants, some are engineers, some are farmers. Some work in government, some own shops, some work in construction. In any of these environments, people gain specialized knowledge. Because you're a doctor, there are things about the health sector that you understand better than a farmer. So if something is changing, you are able to gain or to get insights from the knowledge, the domain knowledge that you have, and you're able to apply whatever the outcomes of that change is to to your way of doing things in the health industry. Are you understanding this? Strive Masiyiwa was able to see that mobile telephony was coming and that the landscape was changing. Why? Because he was an electrical engineer. He worked in that space. So because he was working in that space, he was able to look at the trends and say, this is where the trend is going. So I am going to leave my job here and I'm going to start a company that does this. Why? Because he had domain knowledge. So people must know that knowledge is not merely for your employment. It is a seed of opportunity. In the job that you have, in the business that you have, that is the place where your opportunities grow. You will find opportunities where your focus is, because you understand problems outsiders cannot see. This is one of the things that we must learn as Africa, because we underestimate where God has placed us. And whenever someone looks at our Africanness, the next thing that they ask is, why did God put us here? For many of Africans, opportunities lie elsewhere. And the prayer is, only if I can leave Africa, then I'll be rich. You understand? But because you are focused on leaving, you will never be able to see the opportunities that are there where you are. So you despise where you are. You despise the job that you have. You despise the clients that you have. You despise the business that you have. And because of that, you are not able to see the trends. You're not able to capture the insights that will then catapult that business to the next level, or to lead you in a different direction where the trend is what? Is going. So you must always be curious about your environment, about where you are, about the things that you interact every day with. Because when you stop asking questions, when you stop asking why, when you stop being curious, when you stop digging deeper, you stop connecting ideas. And opportunities come from connected ideas. And if you can't connect ideas, you can't see opportunities. This brings us to the 7th rung on this ladder, which is realization. Realization is, what must I do to make it happen? This is where vision becomes personal responsibility. Because before this point, opportunity belonged to everyone. When you accept responsibility, vision is no longer interesting. It becomes a calling. Unfortunately, at this point, it becomes a burden. You understand? Because you know that if you do not do something about it, then nothing about this situation will change. Before Amazon existed, it existed in Jeff Bezos' realization. He was the one person who understood that, okay, look, I've realized that e-commerce is coming into America, and I am going to build this. Right. It's the same thing with the example that I gave you about Strive Masiyiwa and Econet. So every hospital, every industry, every ministry, every movement, someone accepted that responsibility to say, look, these are the problems that we have, these are the challenges that we are solving, and this is the kind of market that is there for the product that we are building, and we are going to build this solution. So realization is the birth of opportunity. Okay? And manifestation, which is the last rung on the ladder, is where that opportunity then takes shape and thrives. So when you realize that this is your opportunity, the question is no longer, is this interesting? The question is, can this become a business? You start asking deeper questions. Who is my customer? What problem am I solving? How severe is the pain? You've answered all this. Will people actually pay? And one of the greatest habits every entrepreneur should develop is writing an opportunity hypothesis. An opportunity hypothesis is not a business plan. It is a clear statement of who the customer is, what problems they solve, what a solution might look like, and how it can generate revenue. Okay? Once you do that, then the opportunity has become concrete. And realization requires humility, because a lot of the times, entrepreneurs fall in love with the idea. Okay? So I have created this thing. So now many people are coming to listen to me. Many people are coming here because there's this thing that I have. Okay? They fall in love with that thing. And sometimes because they've fallen in love with this thing, it becomes their thing. But a great entrepreneur knows that they are not preparing this thing for themselves. The difference between a person who just loves cooking and a trained chef is the person who loves cooking cook for themselves. But the chef always knows that I am cooking for others. You understand? So they know that if I am to make this dish to serve one person and it tastes this way, I am supposed to be consistent when there are 10 people. I'm supposed to be consistent when there are 100 people. Okay? So when you understand why you are doing this, it's easy to scale the business because at least you have looked at the whole user journey. And you're saying, if I start with the user here, what are they expecting? Where are they going? All right? There's a concept in product development called user testing. All right? You allow the users to test the product. You listen to their concerns when they're using the product. You adapt your product to what they are saying. You understand? Because the goal is not to protect your ego. The goal is not to say, this product is good for me and this is how I want it. The goal is to solve a problem for people who actually want that solution. And the last rung on this ladder is manifestation. What now exists because of this vision? Everything that we have been developing on this ladder leads to this moment. The entrepreneur has climbed from blindness to sight, from sight to understanding, from understanding to imagination, from imagination to insight, from insight to commitment. And now the invisible has become visible. Manifestation is where ideas become enterprises, where possibilities become products, where dreams become institutions, where convictions become movements. The writer of Hebrews tells us that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. An entrepreneur must understand this deeply. We build these things because we believe. We build these things because we have faith that once we are done building these things, we will have people who use these things that we are building. So before everyone else sees the enterprise, you have already seen it. And before the customers arrive, you're the one who is using this product because you're the one who is building it. So you believe before anyone else believes, before the investor believes, before the customer believes, before the employee believes. Are you understanding this? So eventually what existed only in your vision becomes visible for everybody else. And that is manifestation. And once you have done that, you become the eyes of your community. Remember where we studied and Jesus came to proclaim the recovery of sight to the blind. It was the community that brought these blind men to Jesus. They brought this blind man and they said, there's something wrong with this person. Can you heal him? Now, after Jesus had healed this person, he sent him on his way. All right? And then he said, don't tell the people that brought you to me to be healed about what has happened. And I find that very striking. You understand? The community identified a problem. There is a blind man. There is someone who cannot see. And these people brought this person to Jesus. And Jesus, instead of healing this person where they are, he takes this person out of the town and he heals that person. Once he is done healing that person, he tells this person, go your way. Do not tell the people that brought you to me to be healed. Because now you have a vision. The community saw a problem. Jesus gave this person a what? The vision. But he's saying, don't what? Don't tell this community. I find that very interesting. Because what the community was concerned with was his eyesight. You understand? But Jesus gave this person something much bigger. He gave this person a vision. Now, if you go back to people who are just concerned with seeing things and are not concerned with visualizing things, what will happen is these people can actually corrupt your own ideas. So it's important for anyone who has gained a vision, who has seen something, who has risen on the vision ladder to protect their vision while they are still working on it. Are you understanding this? Because if you share your vision prematurely, you would find that a lot of the times you may be forced to lose the faith and the belief that you had in your idea because you shared this idea prematurely. Are you getting this? So, in as much as we want the community to see the visions that we have, we need to protect some of these ideas while we are working on them. Because sometimes it will take you a very long time to work on these ideas. Okay? So you need to protect that idea. The other thing is, it was the community that brought this blind man to Jesus. They wanted to give him eyesight, but Jesus gave him a vision. Africa does not simply need more educated people, more people who just see things, but it needs people who can visualize things, who can see the entire continuum of opportunity recognition and actually take on these opportunities. Because when you climb the vision ladder, you are no longer building a business merely to make money for yourself. You're building a solution, you're building jobs, you're building hopes, you're building institutions, you're building nations. And this is what I believe is the calling of an entrepreneur. So now that we are done with the vision ladder, I just want to give you a few practical tips on how to climb that ladder. The first thing that you have to understand is that a ladder is only useful if you climb it. Knowledge alone does not create entrepreneurs, action does. Opportunity recognition is not a gift reserved for the fortunate few, it is a discipline. And like learning, reading, or driving, there's a deliberate practice to it. And this is what I want you to learn. Habit number 1, observe systems, not events. Okay? When you watch events, always ask yourself, where is the system in this thing that is happening? Because whenever something frustrates you, you must resist the temptation to stop at that event. You must ask, what system produced this. Because when you believe thinking in systems, you will be able to unearth the opportunities that lie in the problems underneath those systems. So if food price increase, don't simply complain, study agriculture, study the logistics around the movement of food, look at the energy, look at the exchange rates, look at the distribution and the incentives in that system. Are you understanding this? Because every system is perfectly designed to produce the result it currently produces. But the results it needs to be redesigned in this system. And as an entrepreneur, what must I do? The second habit is listening to complaints. Okay? Because whenever people are complaining, they're telling you about the things that they're willing to pay for someone to correct. So, a lot of businesses spend a lot of money doing market research and things like that. But because you are starting and you are small, but even if you grow and you become big enough, start by listening to the customers that you actually have. Start by listening to the complaints of those around you. Because in those complaints, that is where you will find some of the products that you are going to create, some of the solutions that you are going to start working on. Every complaint is information, every frustration is data. Pay attention whenever you hear people say, I wish this was there. Why can't someone do this? It is always like this. Why is it always like this? You understand? So when you hear people say those things, those statements are pregnant with opportunities. So start listening for those statements. Habit number 3, follow trends without chasing fashion. Okay? Markets never stand still. Technology changes, governments change, demographics change, consumer behavior changes. The entrepreneur must constantly ask, because of these changes, what has changed? And what is this change making possible? Because if you look at the introduction of smartphones, it did not simply change communication. Okay? That was the goal initially. But it has created to date mobile banking. It created food delivery systems. It created ride-hailing services. It created digital education, telemedicine. Just one change. What happened? It created dozens of opportunities. Are you getting this? So when you follow a trend, you are then able to see where the trend is leading. Okay? Because following fashion is like saying, I now have a phone, so I can communicate with people. All right? But following a trend is asking a deeper question. So because this has happened, what else is going to change because of what? Because of these things. All right? So when you do that, you will be able to see a lot of other opportunities that are within that change that a lot of people are blind to at that particular point in time. So you need to be able to follow those trends. Number 4, stay curious. Curiosity is the engine of entrepreneurial vision. And you must never stop asking questions, because every question opens another door. The day you stop asking questions, you climb up the vision ladder becomes slow. So you need to ask questions, you need to stay curious. And this is a key to going up the ladder. And you must remain teachable, remain observant, and remain fascinated by how the world works. Okay? So do not just get excited about the things that are happening around you without really taking a deeper interest in understanding everything in your environment. Because whenever we talk about impacting communities, whenever we talk about bringing solutions to the communities around us, we must always be willing to sacrifice ourselves for the greater good of the community. The Bible has a principle, a concept that it shares, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs must really value. It says to love your neighbor as you love yourself. So if you have something that you genuinely wish for, something that you want for yourself, the principle says that very thing that you want for yourself, make it happen for your neighbor. Are you understanding this? So when you find yourself facing some level of friction and you're saying, I don't want this friction around my life, and if you're going to find yourself creating a solution to minimize that friction, doing it for you has no benefit. What has benefit is what? Doing it for everybody else around you. So that is a habit that I believe we must start practicing. Habit number 6. Test before you build. Find evidence. Okay? Talk to customers. Build a prototype. Okay? That you can test with. Test the assumptions that you have, because we all have our biases. Our environment gives us biases that we have. So we need to test our assumptions, and we test our assumptions by talking to people who are experiencing the problems that we are trying to solve for. And when we do ask for their input, we must be able to listen, we must be able to improve the product that we are building, because ideas are cheap. Anyone can come up with them. The only thing that makes them valuable is learning. That is where the value is. So an entrepreneur who learns the fastest wins. Okay? So, like I say, don't fall in love with your ideas. Let those people that you're building for fall in love with what? With the idea. The idea is not yours. The idea is for the people that you're building for. So, I want to give you a few mistakes to avoid as you go up this ladder. Mistake number 1 to avoid is remaining at seeing. You observe, you complain, you discuss, you criticize, but you never move to noticing. This is where the majority of the people are. Okay? When you complain, when you discuss things and you criticize them, what you are doing is you are putting the responsibility on someone else. Okay? You're putting the responsibility on someone else, and you're not taking the responsibility yourself to say, I am going to change this. So once you have seen something, once you have had people complaining, like I said, don't complain, because once you complain, you are allocating responsibility elsewhere. Never complain. Okay? So you need to investigate what is happening. Number 2, do not jump straight from seeing to manifestation, because a lot of people make the mistake of getting excited about a problem or an idea that they are solving, and then the next thing that they are doing is they create a company around that, and then they start building immediately. Okay? When you find a problem that you believe is worth solving, spend some time researching on the problem. You will find a lot of the times the things that you are seeing is because there is just something that you are not carefully considering. So if you look at this problem for a bit longer, you may actually find deeper things that can make whatever solution you're creating much more valuable than the first thing that you wanted to what? That you wanted to create. So go through the other rungs, because vision without discernment is dangerous, and manifestation without insight is expensive. So don't rush up the ladder. Mistake number 3, falling in love with your first idea. I think I have said this before. Ideas are not children. Okay? They do not all deserve protection. Some ideas deserve to die. And this is the reality. You understand? So the entrepreneur's responsibility is not to defend these ideas. It is to discover the truth. Hold your ideas loosely. If there is need, let them go. But never lose sight of the problem. Hold the problem tightly, because that is where the solution is what? The solution is. So you find if this solution, if this idea is not working for this problem, we create a second solution for the same problem. Because what is constant? What is constant is what? Is the problem. The fourth mistake is solving problems nobody wants solved. Just because something is frustrating does not mean people will pay to remove that frustration. Customers pay according to value, not according to excitement. What value is this thing actually bringing into people's lives? Okay? So your excitement doesn't matter. All right? Otherwise, you invent something that nobody finds useful. So you need to always validate. Always validate. So every week, ask yourself these 8 questions, one for each run. Seeing, what am I observing in my environment? The second question, noticing. What have other people stopped noticing because they've become accustomed to it? The third thing is perceiving. What system is actually creating this problem? The fourth thing, discernment. Is this truly an opportunity worth pursuing? The fifth thing, vision. What could exist if this problem were solved? The sixth thing, insight. How could it realistically be solved? The seventh thing, realization. What is my next practical step? And the eighth thing is manifestation. What have I built that did not exist before? Jesus did not continue leading blind Bartimaeus after he had healed him. He did not continue leading him by hand, because people who can see, they lead themselves. And they don't only do that, when they develop vision, they lead others. And this is my prayer for every one of you, that you become the eyes of your family, the eyes of your community, the eyes of your industry, the eyes of your country, and the eyes of Africa. Not because you possess better insight, but because you have learned to see differently. Every entrepreneur begins at the bottom of the ladder. No one begins at manifestation. No one begins by building great enterprises. Everyone starts by learning to see. The entrepreneur who changes Africa is not necessarily the one with the most money, the highest degree, or the biggest network. It is the one who has trained themselves to climb the vision ladder, to see what others ignore, to notice what others overlook, to perceive what others misunderstand, to discern what truly matters, to envision what does not yet exist, to gain insight into how it can be. Responsibility for making it happen, and finally, to manifest that vision into enterprises, institutions, and movements that transform lives. The entrepreneur who climbs this ladder will never see problems the same way. And I urge you today to keep climbing. Thank you so much for your time. This is where we end today.